Welcome back to the City Life Project YouTube channel for yet another picks, preview, and predictions video for UFC 312. If you're new to the channel, smash that like button and subscribe, and let's get right into it. A lot of canceled fights, a lot of musical chairs on this one. The latest featuring Niam Jargal and Sun Park. So now we are starting off the card with Quillan Salkilld versus Anshul Jubli. When is Jubli fighting? Link for Jubli, brother. Quillan Salkilld is 7-1 as a pro. 5-0 in his last 5 fights, and he is the pretty big favorite on this one, minus 410. Had a really good scrap, a competitive scrap, and a really good performance in his Dana White Contender Series win. Though he didn't get the finish in that one, it was a great win in my opinion. 25 years of age, and he's taking on Anshul Jubli, who's 30 years of age, 4-1 in his last 5 fights, lost his last fight to Mike Breeden, and was actually winning in that one. The first 2 rounds were his. He was starting to fade in the second round, and that's when Mike Breeden just took over and was able to finish him in that 3rd round when Anshul Jubli gassed. 4 decisions, 2 KO TKOs, 1 submission, 1-1 in the UFC, 5-0 in Matrix Fight Night. Tore up road to UFC, didn't take on the best competition on the regional scene. Only went 1-0 as an amateur. I'm going with the Aussie Quillan Salkilld. 2 KO TKOs, 3 submissions, 2 decisions, 1-0 in Contender Series, 6-1 in Eternal MMA, where he was the champion and defended the belt twice. He just fought better competition. Like, he won the belt against a 7-1 guy when he was only 3-1, then defended against a 3-1 and 4-1 guy, respectively. Guys, you know, quite frankly, on his level, but clearly he was above those guys, and that was evident early. Really successful amateur career as well, going 8-3, where he got a lot of experience in Gamma and Eternal, as well as XFC. He had a little run there, finishing guys left, right, and center. I know Anshul Jubli is a grappler whose striking actually looked quite polished against Mike Breeden early in his UFC debut, but his cardio was clearly an issue. I wonder if that's going to be different in this one, but I just think Salkilld is a way better boxer. Despite Jubli's boxing looking better in his last fight, Salkilld is just a way better striker. Salkilld is more well-rounded, has fought better competition, and is just more of the dangerous fighters. So I'm going with him on this one. That is when Jubli is fighting. Next up the card, we have Kevin Jousset against Jonathan Micallef. Now, I'm just going to say this right now, elephant in the room, for a numbered card, for a pay-per-view, especially the pay-per-view portion of this card, it leaves a lot to be desired. This is not a card where name value will bring in casual buyers, you know, UFC fans, but not hardcore MMA fans. For hardcore MMA fans, this is a really fun card because there's a lot of UFC debutants from Dana White Contender Series. There's a lot of guys outside the rankings who are starting to, you know, gain some helium, rise in the rankings, put on exciting fights that, again, the hardcores are excited to see compete. But as far as name value, yeah, this card lacks it for being a pay-per-view, especially the pay-per-view portion of this card. Overall, like, I'm actually excited for this card. I'm excited to see how a lot of these prospects look, quite frankly. But this is the type of card that you make a fight night in Australia, or, you know, take the Australian prospect factor out of this, you do at the Apex. So just wanted to throw that out there. Kevin Jousset against Jonathan Micallef. Speaking of Dana White Contender Series, another UFC debutant off of Dana White Contender Series. Airs Jousset 10-3 as a pro. He's 4-1 in his last 5 fights. He did lose his last fight. Brutally lost to Brian Battle just 4 months ago. You really think the Butcher was gonna lose to a French dude? He's taking on Jonathan Micallef, 7-1 as a pro, 4-1 in his last 5 fights as well on a 2-fight win streak. Plus, he's the underdog at plus 200 against, you know, now I don't want to say like UFC veteran, but the UFC fighter who's had some experience. Mind you, not taking on the best competition in the UFC in Kiefer Crosby. Kanan Song's pretty good, and that's like a solid win to have on your resume, but he wasn't able to finish him. On the regional scene, though, Jousset was quite dangerous. Jonathan Micallef, 2 KO TKOs, 3 submissions, 2 decisions, 5-1 in Hex. We beat an 8-1 guy for the belt. 4-1 guy before then. Beat a 13-4 guy in his last Hex fight before beating Mohamed Addo, who's 5-0 on Dana White's Contender Series. Went 5-1 as an amateur as well. I'm going to count on Kevin Jousset getting this one done, guys. Trains out of CKB, 4 KO TKOs, 1 submission, 5 decisions, 2-2 in Eternal, 4-0 in Hex, 2-1 in the UFC thus far. I mean, a mixed bag on the regional scene. Did fight Jack Della Maddalena. Lost in that one in the second round. Doctor stoppage due to a cut, but fought some decent opponents. 11-1, 12-6, 10 Kiefer Crosby, 10-3. I just looked at the number there and not his name. But Keenan Song, again, despite it not being a dominant win, it's still a good win against a experienced vet in Keenan Song, who still comes to fight every single bout. Brian Battle showed that he's just a level above him, which I think a lot of us thought he was anyways. But having said that, I think Kevin Jousset's a level above Jonathan Micallef. It's a good debut. It's like, welcome to the UFC. Thrown into the waters right away. Not quite like the deep waters, but deep waters nonetheless. And that's why I'm going with Jousset on this one. Man, I could get absolutely burned on picks on this card or do well. This is another one of those where there's a lot of prospects. There's a lot of just like roster fighters, unranked guys fighting on this one and gals. So it's just tough to make these types of picks because we still don't know exactly what some of these guys and gals are made of in the UFC. But that's what makes these, again, types of cards for the hardcores exciting. So Kevin Jousset should get this one done. Jonathan Micallef was definitely not a standout for me on Dana White's Contender Series. Though Jousset striking didn't look that great against Brian Battle in his last fight. I think Brian Battle's striking is just that much better than his. I think this is a way better matchup for Jousset than the Brian Battle matchup, who Brian Battle is very well rounded and just a better striker. Micallef, yes, is the better wrestler, and though I think Kevin Jousset has a decent ability to get back up to his feet, it's not like he's the best grappler himself. He's definitely more of a kickboxer, but kind of just like a stoic one. Like, doesn't have any like fancy footwork or anything like that, but hits quite hard and the fundamentals are nice and polished. If Kevin Jousset keeps us on the feet, he should win this one. Like I said, good enough grappling and takedown defense to keep this on the feet, I imagine. But maybe Micallef's wrestling is just that good, and we'll see that on display here. Again, debutant off Dana White Contender Series. Let's see what he's made of. Jousset's a big guy too, so I don't necessarily think that Micallef's going to be that much of a threat in the clinch either, which could bode well for Jousset. Micallef's only 25 years of age though, so even if he loses this one or goes to the judges and he loses this one, like, it's not like this guy's going to be cut right away. They'll give him another chance or two, given how young he is as well. Okay, moving up the card, we got Kody Steele against Rongzhu. See, another Dana White Contender Series prospect, a UFC debutant, who the UFC has been wanting to sign for a while. They flat out just like wanted to give him a Dana White Contender Series position, I think a year before he even competed this last season. And at one point just like said they would flat out sign him. But Kody Steele wanted to continue to develop, reign at the top of Fury FC. And he did just that and polish up his striking, which he did just that as well. He is an extremely talented wrestler whose boxing has developed leaps and bounds in the last couple of years. He's 7-0 as a pro, 29 years of age, is the favorite at -240, trains out of Syndicate now, 4 KO TKOs, 1 submission, 2 decision. 1-0 of Contender Series, 6-0 in Fury. He's 6-2 guy at Chasen Blair, beautiful body shot. And Chasen Blair's no joke either on Dana White's Contender Series, where he again showed off his boxing. Again, was going to go in Dana White's Contender Series in 2024, but instead took on an experienced Alejandro Martinez, was able to take him out in the 3rd round, employing his great wrestling and his striking. And you just look at his resume here as well. 2-0, took on a 4-2 guy. 3-0, 2-1, then took a huge step up in competition. Took on a lot of grappling matches, as well as, again, just an insanely good grappler and very talented wrestler. Like, Cody Steele should be something special. Again, 29 years of age, but he's very much still a prospect in mixed martial arts. But he's been very much working on his technique and polishing up his boxing. Now, Rongzhu, his second run in the UFC now. It's crazy that this guy is over 30 fights and he's 24, right? It's like Cody Steele's going up against, a guy who's making his second run in the UFC and quite frankly a veteran at this point in the sport. And Cody Steele's older than this guy. That's the MMA scene in China. Now, Rongzhu's good. He just may not be UFC level. Or at the very least, like roster level, never even going to sniff the ranking sort of thing. Whereas Cody Steele, give him a few fights, and maybe this guy starts to sniff the rankings. 14 KO TKOs for Rongzhu. He's tough as nails. Has actually polished up his striking as well upon leaving the UFC and going to fight in some legitimate regional shows. 7 submissions, 3 decisions. Usually finishes his opponents, which is good to see. 1-3 in the UFC. 16-2 in Wulin Fang. Take that with a grain of salt. It's Wulin Fang. 2-1 in Chinwumen and 3-0 in Road to UFC. Now, Chris Padilla, beautiful elbow. Oh my goodness, it was absolutely gorgeous that he landed on Rongzhu, and he said it was inspired by Superlek, who landed that on Jonathan Haggerty the night before, which was awesome. Before them was on a 4-fight win streak before losing to Ignacio Bahamondes in the UFC. Bahamondes is solid, so like no shame in that. Went to UAE Warriors, took on a decent guy, beat him, knocked him out, and then had a submission, a knockout, and a unanimous decision victory on Road to UFC, going up against solid competition. I actually picked Rongzhu to beat Chris Padilla back in September. Shout out to Chris Padilla. That was an awesome knockout. Rongzhu just looked a lot sloppier in the striking there compared to the guys that he beat on Road to UFC. But maybe Chris Padilla is just that much better than the guys that he beat on Road to UFC. So like Rongzhu as an underdog here, not a bad underdog by any means, because it's like, again, welcome to the UFC. Cody Steele, this ain't Fury FC anymore, though. Again, took on some decent competition at Fury FC. I do think Cody Steele could either smother Rongzhu in the grappling, maybe get a submission, maybe force his way to get a TKO victory due to ground and pound. Rongzhu's striking should be better than Cody Steele, but if Cody Steele outboxes Rongzhu, that's just more exciting for us UFC fans. And I know the UFC brass will be pumped because they just want to see Cody Steele succeed as well. But Rongzhu is no joke. Rongzhu is a good underdog at plus 195. However, I'm picking Cody Steele to win this one. Moving up the card, we have the debut of Aleksandre Topuria against Colby Thicknesse. Now, Aleksandre Topuria was supposed to take on Cody Haddon, which would have been a very big test for Aleksandre Topuria. And honestly, I probably would have picked Cody Haddon to win that one, as Cody Haddon was 8-1, 5 KO TKOs, 2 submissions, won his first UFC fight. Great win off Contender Series, was a Hex champ himself and defended it. Mind you, not against the greatest guys. But I think Cody Haddon is just a better prospect, just a better fighter overall than Aleksandre Topuria. And I know Topuria is getting up there in age, but he only has 6 pro fights. Took, I think it was like 5 or 6 years off to basically like train with Ilya, help him out, polish his skills and techniques as well, and then came back into fighting and has just gone on an absolute tear. Doesn't fight a lot, like I said, took a huge layoff between these 2 fights, between his loss, but has gone on a 3-fight win streak. Mind you, his last fight was over a year ago. Over 2 years ago was his other one, and then 3 years ago upon his return. So he's gone like 3 years, 3 fights, only fights once a year, but apparently now is like, it's his time. He's going all in upon, helping Ilya get to the top. He's the heavy favorite in this one, which I think is crazy. Now, he could just walk out there, land a huge hook. Good night, Jim Kite. It's over. He fights a lot like Ilya, has a good grappling background, so maybe he gets a submission as well. But for a guy who's only 5-1, for guys as inconsistent, despite his team being awesome and his brother's success and training with his brother, I get it. 3 KO TKOs, 2 submissions, 0 decisions. That's what I like to see. Look at his level of competition. A bunch of nobodies. Now, the guy who knocked him out, actually is pretty good, 4-0. 7-18, 1-9, 3-1. I know you're finishing them, and I do say on this channel, and then some of you guys hold me to this, if you make it look easy against those guys and get them out there quickly, then, you're just taking the fight. You're working at the end of the day. And I get that. But, the UFC doesn't usually sign guys like this, straight up. Definitely came in due to his brother. All right. We all know that. So he better show up. It's crazy that the odds makers are giving him minus 410. Maybe he was always going to be the slight favorite, even though, again, I think Haddon probably would have beaten him. Colby Thicknesse taking this fight on short notice, 25 years of age. A solid prospect in his own right, one of Alex Volkanovski's training partners. 7-0 as a pro, 5-0 in his last 5 fights. 2 KO TKOs, 2 submissions, 3 decisions. 3-0 in Hex, and he is the champion in Hex, so he beat a 5-3 guy in his last fight. 4-2 guy. Like, already this guy's fought and beaten better opponents than Topuria. And on the amateur scene, went 8-1 with 2 amateur titles, one in the IMMAF and Super Fight MMA. So, man. God, this one's tough. Because, like, the way Topuria won is good. Like, even if this goes decision, 2 rounds, maybe Thicknesse wins the 3rd. Oh, this one's tough, man. I mean, at plus 320, like, good underdog, given that just, like, he's more of the seasoned regional fighter, but, like, Topuria, it's not like Topuria hasn't surrounded himself around MMA for the last few years, right? I'm going with Topuria. I'm going to bank on him finishing Thicknesse. You know what's crazy about this one, though? Thicknesse didn't sign a 4-fight, short notice contract, which, burns one with this one. The UFC just signed him for this event, Rise and Style, which is interesting because usually, the last few years anyways, and I've talked to regional fighters, they say a lot of them, they're thrilled to go on Dana White's Contender Series because it's like, if you win in beautiful fashion, you almost jump the line as far as popularity and just like getting in the good graces of the UFC. But it's a gamble at the end of the day, right? Whereas taking a short notice fights, like even if you lose, the UFC's not going to hold that against you, and you get 3 more fights, knock on wood, barring they don't cut you after the next 2. But at least they're more endearing to giving you another chance, and you get a contract, right? But now apparently they're just signing regional fighters. Maybe it's just because this card was like falling apart. Maybe it's just because there was, another Australian talent that was on their radar anyways. And maybe when they sign him, or win or lose, he goes on Dana White's Contender Series or The Ultimate Fighter. Who knows? But anyways, just wanted to throw that out there. Good underdog given his experience, but I'm going with Topuria. Good grappler, solid wrestling, great hooks as he charges in, but a little bit more reckless. Like, his striking's not obviously far from where his brother's striking is at as far as like the polished boxing, but kind of look like early Ilia Topuria, walking in, swinging those hooks. Hits hard as well. Hits hard. Again, hasn't fought a lot of good opponents. Thicknesse is a really good grappler. His striking's not as polished overall. So, like, maybe this one is just a brawl, but I do think Topuria will land more shots, and those are dangerous shots because Thicknesse doesn't have a high guard. It doesn't employ a high guard regularly. Thicknesse is a submission threat. Topuria, a KO threat, in my opinion, despite Topuria having good grappling as well. So anyways, banking on Topuria finishing him early in the striking, but I'm not counting Thicknesse out by any means. And if Topuria finishes him easy, then it's like, okay, you're the real deal, James Neal. Moving up the card, we have Wang Cong against Bruno Brasil. And honestly, I like this matchup. Kudos to the matchmakers for this one. Bruno Brasil, despite being Brazilian, coming out of the womb in a gi and a couple stripes on her white belt, she's primarily a striker, a Muay Thai striker, Muay Thai striking style in particular. So we got some kickboxing from the Joker, Wang Cong, against Muay Thai in Bruno Brasil. She trains out of the Fighting Nerds. 10-4-1 in her pro MMA career. 3-2 in her last 5 fights. She's a win one, lose one type of fighter in the UFC. Fun fight against Molly McCann, but like just way too, I don't even want to say close, but clumsy for my liking. I guess that's the best word to describe it. Sloppy. Luma Lukbumi is an awesome striker and just getting better at keeping the fights on the feet. Good takedown defense and ability to get back up to her feet. So no shame in that loss. Shauna Bannon, good win. Shauna Bannon had some helium, had some hype coming off the regional scene. Loss to Denise Gomez. Yeah, she just absolutely beat her up. Just showed that there's some levels to this. And Marnik Mann, who she kicked in the head, highlight reel head kick, just shows that she does have some dangerous knockout power, does Bruno Brasil. 3 KO TKOs, 2 submissions, 5 decisions, 2-2 in the UFC, 1-0 in LFA. And again, hasn't shown that she's anything special in the UFC, nor do I think she ever will be. but has put on some exciting fights. Much like Wang Cong, who has a win over Valentina Shevchenko in kickboxing. Mind you, if you watch the fight, it was very, very close, and you could maybe say that she got some hometown bias judging. But 32 years of age, making her way into mixed martial arts. Still relatively new in her mixed martial arts career. Lost her last fight getting a little too cheeky against Gabriela Fernandez, and got herself choked out. Before then was on a 6-fight win streak. Victoria Leonardo, beautiful, beautiful knockout in her first UFC fight, and she's coming off road to UFC, and Quillan Fang. 2 KO TKOs, 2 submissions, 2 decisions. Kunlun Fight World Championship. Did I say Kunlun Fang? That's Wulin Fang. My bad. Kunlun Fight, yeah, she fought MMA in Kunlun and kickboxing. Fought in Wulin Fang kickboxing as well as the WKA World Super Sanda King Tournament. Solid striker. Can't get overconfident. This is mixed martial arts. I imagine in this camp she's been drilling takedown defense and just like the ability to get back up to her feet. But unless Bruna Brasil is getting her ass kicked on the feet and has not been knocked out yet, I don't see Brasil being the biggest submission threat or wrestling threat in this one, which is why I think it's a great job by the matchmakers and that this one should be pretty violent. Going with the favorite, which I think this is a little too heavy, to be perfectly honest. Maybe like minus 300, minus like 280. But I am going with Wang Cong on this one. I even wrote in my notes, odds a little bit too big. Bruna Brasil, good kicks, good Muay Thai style. Okay grappling, and she is strong, but Wang Cong, if she keeps this on the feet, I think her kickboxing is way more slick. She's got better footwork. She's got power. And I know Bruna Brasil's got that like fighting nerds magic behind her, but I think that magic will only bring violence to this one versus a finish. So Wang Cong, that is my pick. All right, next we have Tom Nolan against Viacheslav Borshchev. Slava Claus, ladies and gentlemen, who despite training at a Team Alpha Male for over 5 years now, still can't defend a takedown, still has no wrestling, but that's okay because if he can keep this fight on the feet, his kickboxing is sick, and he puts on so many fun fights in victory or defeat. 8-4-1 in his pro MMA career. He is 2-2-1 in his last 5 fights. He's the slight favorite in this one at minus 135. If he was the underdog, I would say pick him because, again, Tom Nolan hasn't been challenged too much in his young UFC career. He's only 24 years of age, and he likes to go for the highlight reel finish early, and sometimes he gasses himself out. Sometimes he leaves himself open to being finished or open to just being hurt, mind you. I do think Tom Nolan overall is the more well-rounded fighter, but if this fight stays on the feet where Tom Nolan will likely want it to stay where he can look for that finish, that's just going to help Borshchev. So I think the game plan probably for Tom Nolan should be and is like as soon as you recognize that Borshchev's outstriking you and you can't get that highlight reel finish or that just big shot because, you know, Tom Nolan does that power finishing ability, take this to the ground. Tom Nolan's wrestling is actually underrated. Look, it's nothing special, but he has it. He's good. He's well-rounded. He's a mixed martial artist, whereas Borshchev is still a kickboxing crossover despite being, having a little bit more experience in this particular sport. Tom Nolan's a huge lightweight as well. Over 6 feet tall, if I'm not mistaken. 5 KO, 2 KO, 0 submissions, 3 decisions, 2-1 in the UFC, 1-0 off Contender Series. And yeah, I mean, probably should have finished Alex Reyes a little bit earlier in that one. Looked really good and he was dominant in that one, but you know, Alex Reyes, he showed heart, so credit to him. Victor Martinez, great win in that one. Lost to Nicholas Mota, and again, in hindsight, Nicholas Mota, not really anything special right now, and you could even say last year kind of lost that hype that he had coming into the UFC, but like what did Nicholas Mota have? Power in his mitts. Like you're not just going to lose that despite you being chinny, right? So like don't really blame him for that one. Beat Bogdan Grad on Bogdan Grad's first fight on Day 1 Contender Series, which was awesome, and fought some decent opponents early in his career. Had a good amateur run as well, going 6-1, and he was the XFC amateur champion. Though I don't think Tom Nolan's completely polished just yet. Borshchev, I don't know if he's ever just going to apply the wrestling to his game. 6 KO TKOs, 0 submissions, 2 decisions. He's never been knocked out, but he has taken a lot of damage. So it's just like, it's a matter of time I would say he's tough as nails. I really would. Like, again, he can take a lot of damage, and he's been in some wars in the UFC already. 3-3-1 in the UFC, 1-1 in LFA. Like, this fight against James Iontop was awesome. It was just a slugfest. He won a split decision, deservingly so in my opinion, but his face was fucked. Iontop's face was fucked. It was incredible. It was incredible. Chase Hooper knocking him down was pretty incredible as well. But yeah, this is going to be a fun fight. This is going to be a fun fight. I imagine it stays on the feet for a while, and I hope it's even. And again, I'm picking Tom Nolan to win. That's not why I hope it's even, or that Tom Nolan can match the striking of Borshchev, because I'm picking Tom Nolan to win. I just want to see a good fight. And I think Tom Nolan's well-roundedness is always something to take into account when a fighter's an underdog, if you are betting on the sport. So Tom Nolan, solid underdog in this one. I mean, it's near even. If Borshchev was an underdog, I'd be a little bit more stoked. Again, from a betting perspective, picking him as the underdog or dropping a little something on him just because, like, just a little bit more UFC experience. But again, the well-roundedness of Tom Nolan, barring he actually mix in some grappling, even some control time up against the cage, some short elbows, knees, just doing some damage in every position that he can get in, and just doing that extra little bit, I think will do him good, especially if this goes the distance, because Slava Claus is tough as nails. Despite getting knocked down by Chase Hooper. Okay, Jack Jenkins against Gabriel Santos. Again, another sick matchup. So I know a lot of people are dogging 312, and I get it. The pay-per-view portion is not worth the money, and you expect more from numbered cards. This is a fight night card. This is a fight night card showcasing a lot of young talent. So as a hardcore MMA fan, more than just like a UFC fan, I am so fucking pumped for this card, but I totally understand why you guys aren't. Jack Jenkins against Gabriel Santos. I am a big fan of Gabriel Santos, as am I a fan of Jack Jenkins. Jack Jenkins more from the entertainment slugfest fight point of view. Gabriel Santos, I just think, is very polished overall and is, technique-wise, very fun to watch. 12-2 as a pro. His 2 losses he suffered in his last 5 fights. He's gone 3-2 in his last 5 fights. He did win his last fight against Yiza. 3 KO TKOs, 4 submissions, 4 decisions. A sick grappler who's dangerous on the feet, but even more dangerous on the ground, is 1-2 in the UFC. 2-0 in LFA. Now, he lost his first 2 fights in the UFC. First fight was a split decision loss in a competitive fight against Lerone Murphy, who we've continued to see do very well in the UFC. And after that, got knocked out by David Onama. No shame in that. David Onama, very, very good fighter and has some wicked knockout power. Bounce back against a veteran, a guy with a lot of experience in Yiza. In LFA, had some sick wins. Was the future MMA champ. Was the LFA champ. Fought Elvis Brenner on the regional scene. I mean, okay, he won the Coronel Kabate 9. He beat a 3-4 guy, so who really cares about that one? Again, on the feet, he throws some sweet kicks. He can keep the fight at range. He can get into a brawl. Look, he got knocked out by Onama. Doesn't mean that his chin is bad by any means, but Jack Jenkins hits hard. Jack Jenkins can continue to push forward, which I think is going to be it's just going to be an awesome style matchup for this one. I do think Gabriel Santos is just more of a threat overall, given that he has grappling, that he has sick jiu-jitsu, but Jack Jenkins, very good at keeping fights on the feet, is a solid wrestler overall, and his boxing, though I don't think is as quick and as fast as just Santos' striking overall, he hits freaking hard, man. 13-3 as a pro, 4-1 in his last 5 fights. As an underdog, I like it. I mean, there's a lot of underdogs that, like, I drop a little something on. A few bills here in the USA, couple toonies up in Canada, you know what I'm saying? I'm picking Gabriel Santos to win, but again, if I'm going to bet on this one, I'm dropping a little something on Jack Jenkins. 13-3, 6 KO TKOs, 3 submissions, 4 decisions. Never lost via decision. 2 submission losses, 1 KO TKO. 3-1 in the UFC, 1-0 on Contender Series. I mean, he had a tune-up fight against Herbert Burns. And honestly, I thought he should have dominated him a little earlier. Look, Gabriel Santos, he ain't no Herbert Burns, man. He's like 2-3 times better than Herbert Burns. A loss to Chepe, but that was due to an injury. But Chepe's a solid opponent, so who knows how that one would have gone. It wasn't like Jack Jenkins was dominating Chepe before the injury. Jamal Emmers, good win. Don Shainis, meh. Yeah, hasn't really gone on to do much since, right? Losing in Budo Cento Championship, mind you, against solid opponents. So I'm going with the guy who I just think is a more dynamic striker and who's a jiu-jitsu threat against more of a brawl with good wrestling and relies on his power a little bit more than just like his speed. But if he can get into the pocket and his footwork has improved, then, you know, like I said, Jack Jenkins is a dangerous and enticing underdog on this one. Like I said, I'm either going to get wrecked in predictions or do pretty good, I imagine. All right, let's move on to the next one. Jake Matthews against Francisco Prado. Again, honestly, probably going to be a really good fight. I can't imagine Jake Matthews is going to grapple in this one. I know grappling base when he started, but hasn't really shown it much in the UFC since. And Francisco Prado making his welterweight debut, moving up from 155, and looked huge at welterweight. So excited to see him fight at this weight class, given that apparently he walked around quite heavy and, you know, his weight cuts were just horrendous. Jake Matthews, 20-7 as a pro, 3-2 in his last 5 fights, 30 years of age, and he's the favorite coming into this one. I get it. Prado, still unproven in the UFC, gets into brawl, slows down when he can't finish his opponent early, whereas Jake Matthews has proven that he can go 3 rounds, proven that he can get into brawls, proven that he actually has a pretty good chin as well. Jake Matthews' boxing is, you know, developed to the point where, like, he relies on it more than anything, can keep fights on the feet, is good in the clinch. He's just inconsistent. Like, some fights his striking is like so polished and he's dangerous and he can beat you anywhere on the ground, on the cage, in the clinch, on the feet. And then there's some where it's just like there's massive holes in his game, and maybe you just attribute it to, like, okay, it's just an off night. But there's too many off nights, you know what I'm saying? 5 KO TKOs, 8 submissions, 7 decision victories for him. Very well balanced career. 13-7 in the UFC. He's really been in the UFC for 10 years now. Wow. Or I guess 11 years now, and 3-0 in Fighters Express promotions. Beat Phil Rowe in his last fight, before then lost to Michael Morales, no shame in that. Beat Darius Flowers, decent win. Yep, see, lost a semi, the Jedi. Beat Andre Fialho. And again, 2022 Andre Fialho wasn't on his, like, you know, Tony Ferguson decline just yet. Lost Sean Brady, no shame in that. The thing is, like, he doesn't have a lot of impressive wins in the UFC. I guess Li Jingliang. But the guys he lost to, other than Matthew Selmsberger, and who the fuck is this guy? But, you know, that was back in 2018, so who cares? You know, but like Sean, like, okay, out of his last 3 losses, 2 of them were against, like, really good opponents. So hasn't beat anybody of note, but hasn't lost to just straight up roster fighters or bottom of the barrel UFC roster fighters, I should say, right? Usually brings a fun fight, a striking affair in victory or defeat. Francisco Prado's fun to watch though, man. 12-2 as a pro, 3-2 in his last 5 fights, so his 2 losses have come in his last 5 fights. Out of Argentina, only 22 years of age, already has 14 fights under his belt. This guy likes to brawl, man. His takedown defense is good early in the fights, but when he starts to gas, it's, you know, he may just keep his, you know, back pushed up against the cage and just kind of stay there. So takedown defense up against the cage a little bit. It's pretty good. But overall, he's a boxer. He's a striker. He wants to be in the pocket and just land those big shots. 6 KO TKOs, 6 submissions. Okay? Against lesser opponents, he can get the submission. A lot of the times, he'll knock his opponent down, follow them to the ground, and just get into the dominant position where he can get the submission, though. 1-2 in the UFC, 6-0 in Samurai Fight House. I mean, Jamie Malarkey, for everything we say about Jamie Malarkey, Prado couldn't knock him out. So that is one thing to note. That was in 2023, but that's still when Jamie Malarkey was chinny. And then lost to Daniel Zellhuber. No shame in that. Zellhuber is awesome. Beat Ottoman Zaitar. Whatever. So again, his start to his UFC career hasn't been anything special, but moving up to 170, we'll see how it goes now. The guys he beat in Samurai Fight House were actually really good. He defended his title against a 13-3 guy, beat a 6-0 guy, 21-15, man, but 8-2 guy before then. So, like, honestly, his last little run in Samurai Fight House wasn't bad. Definitely, like, a guy that they wanted to develop there. As you can see, pretty much only fought there in Argentina. But they didn't spoon feed him, you know, cans in the year or two before his UFC signing, or his, you know, start to his UFC career. Oh, man. If this goes the distance, I could see Jake Matthews winning, you know, round 2 and 3. I think the first round, Prado's going to come out like a bat out of hell, and I'm going to bank on him finishing Jake Matthews. I really am. Moves up to 170. I think the power translates. Not small compared to Matthews. Matthews is too inconsistent, and against a guy who's going to try to finish you and, you know, doesn't get finished easy in Prado, given his age, and, you know, if he keeps fighting like this and doesn't block a lot of these shots, and, you know, maybe that's a different story. But right now, he's good. He's good. I'm going with the guy who's a little bit more dangerous. Crazy big punches, crazy big hooks. Yes, Jake Matthews is the wrestler. I don't think he's going to lean on that. I think this one's going to be a scrap. If it goes to decision, again, Matthews, I think, can squeeze out 2 rounds, but maybe Prado does just more damage in each round. We shall see. I'm going to go with the underdog on this one. I like him as an underdog betting-wise. Am I a little bit more confident in Jake Matthews? And should I pick him if I worried about my picks and if I was doing that Tapology pick shit? Probably. Safer, I get it. But I'm going with the young gun here. I'm going with the young gun to bounce back with a finish of Jake Matthews. Let's freaking go. All right, moving up on this. So again, the main card portion of this for a pay-per-view, it's just not worth it, quite frankly. It's just not worth it. The return of Jimmy Crute, who I thought was retired. Yes, I did. Against Rodolfo Bellato on a pay-per-view in Australia, yes. The light heavyweight clash here with the returnee Jimmy Crute, who is 1-3-1 in his last 5 fights. Only 28 years of age, but it's taken over a year and a half off, which again, he did say that he was retiring, or I guess hinting at it, but took time off, recharged, rejuvenated, and he is back. A very, very talented grappler is Jimmy Crute, but I think fell in love with his hands upon knocking out Modestas Bukauskas, and then since didn't really employ any grappling at all, or didn't lean on that at all, and was getting quite frankly, starched left, right, and center. Anthony Smith leg kicked him to TKO. Jamal Hill knocked him out brutally. You should have seen his eye. Alonzo Menifield, that one was a draw, but then he had a rematch against him, and Alonzo Menifield hurt him, and then got him in the guillotine choke early. So, yeah, don't have a lot of confidence in Jimmy Crute, but then I look at his opponent, Rodolfo Bellato, and I'm like, oh my goodness. 12-2 as a pro on a 4-fight win streak, 4-1 in his last 5 fights. You're probably thinking, Isha, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? You don't have confidence in Bellato beating Jimmy freaking Crute here, okay? Look, he's the favorite because he's been winning and he's been more active. But he ain't that great, ladies and gentlemen, okay? And you know what? Like, no disrespect to him. He just fights very sloppy. He does. And at the highest level, you can't fight sloppy. Jimmy Crute may not be the best striker, but at least his striking is a little polished. It's not as sloppy as that of Bellato's. 7 KO TKOs, 4 submissions, 1 decisions, 4-0 in LFA, and I'll give him props for that. 1-1 on Contender Series, that's right, he had 2. And 1-0 in the UFC. Ihor Potieria almost beat him. Ihor Potieria almost beat him, ladies and gentlemen. He was able to come back in that one and finish him. It was a fun fight. It was a sloppy affair, though. It was a fun fight, but when Ihor Potieria almost finishes you, bro. Okay? Beat a 6-0 guy in Dana White's Contender Series who has not fought since. Won the LFA title against a decent guy, I will say. Asio Dos Santos, solid opponent. It's not the worst record. It's not the best. 4-1 guy when he was 5-1, I'll take it. 5-1 guy when he was 6-1, fine. 11-4, not bad. Lost to Vitor Petrino twice on the regional scene, by the way. I just have not been impressed with Rodolfo Bellato. They say he's more of a striker over a grappler. I think he's, well-rounded in the sense where nothing is great. Everything is just good. Like, he's a good striker and a good grappler, but he's neither great in any sense. Whereas, like, Jimmy Crute's a great grappler, not the greatest striker. I don't know. I just think Rodolfo Bellato's too slow for this level of competition. I really do. But Jimmy Crute coming off of this big of a layoff, and it's Jimmy Crute. Man. Jimmy Crute, you better win in Australia, baby. Let's go. We're going Jimmy Crute. For all the reasons I said. Jimmy Crute. God damn it. Move on to the next one. Featured fight. I can't believe this is a fucking featured fight on a pay-per-view card. Like I said, like, I'm stoked on this one, but it's just crazy that the UFC is charging us $80+ to see a UFC debutant off Dana White's Contender Series from the heavyweight division, the thinnest division in, quite frankly, mixed martial arts globally right now, and Justin Tafa. A tough opponent for Teixeira in his debut, and a lot of people probably say, like, Justin Tafa, what are you talking about? It's not like Teixeira is gonna grapple Justin Tafa. It's not like this is a grappling first heavyweight, Almeida style. Teixeira's a striker. Teixeira's a striker who has not beaten the best competition. Now, he's looked good in the fights that he's been in, other than his last Dana White Contender Series fight where it was way too close for comfort, but apparently he was injured in that one, so I guess we give him the pass. He's undefeated. He's 25 years of age. I'm excited that he's in the UFC. I'm excited that there's some young heavyweight talent, especially given his frame. He's 6'7", 83 inches of reach. He's very good at just those straight punches, very good at keeping his opponents on the outside. And he's the favorite in this one, which is crazy. Smash that money on Justin Tafa, ladies and gentlemen, coming in as an underdog here. Look, like, it's heavyweight. If Teixeira keeps us on the outside, he very well could crack Tafa. He very well could just do more damage if Tafa doesn't crack him or doesn't have the opportunity to crack him. Tafa could just make this dirty and clinch him up against the cage, try to land some short elbows and just drag this to a decision and do more damage. I don't think he's going to do that. I think Tafa's going to get in the pocket at one point early-ish in this fight, before the third round for sure, and I think Tafa's going to crack him. And that's not to say that I think Teixeira's going to get fraud checked or anything like that. It's just this guy's still very young. This guy's not fought a striker as dangerous as Tafa. The lights are going to be bright here. Featured fight on a pay-per-view. 6 KO TKOs, 1 submission, 0 decision. 2-0 LFA, 1-0 Contender Series. Artur Lopez, you're looking at, 6-1, or 6-2 now, but 6-1 going into this one. You're probably like, oh, well, what's wrong with that record? 5 KO TKOs. Okay, so you're like, oh, well, what's the matter? This guy's like, he's solid. Bro, he didn't fight since 2018, okay? And then he fought a 3-4 guy and beat him in the first round, okay? He had no business looking as good as he did against Teixeira. And he looked good against Teixeira in the first round. Now, Teixeira, again, was injured, and maybe that was the reason. I guess we'll find out. Justin Tafa has fought some decent opponents. 7 KO TKOs, 3 losses via decisions. In fairness to him, he's never been submitted, okay? He's only lost 3 times via decision, getting, quite frankly, out-grappled. 4-4-1 in the UFC, 3-0 in XFC. Trains with his brothers and some solid training partners. Beat Austin Lane, which, whatever, is an okay win. Carl Williams did what Carl Williams needed to do, which was out-grapple him, because on the feet, Justin Tafa was going to beat him. Good win against Parker Porter, who had an awesome win on BKFC. Now, Harry Hunsucker, whatever. He landed a head kick, which was absolutely insane. Lost a decision to Vandera. Vandera grappled him. Lost a split decision to Carlos Felipe. Felipe tried to grapple him. Well, actually was successful in most of that fight, grappling him. So, it's crazy that he's been in the UFC for this long now. But yeah, fought a few fights in XFC. Beat a 5-3 guy. Knocked him the fuck out too. Defended it against a 3-1 guy. UFC signed him, and he's either knocking guys out or at least surviving. He's hard to finish, right? Heavyweight mixed martial arts. Dana White's going to like this type of fighter who wants just to go there and stand and bang. Versus a guy like Rosenstrike who stands there and I thought was, good enough to stay on the roster, but nope, you got out grappled, you're gone. But Justin Tafa gets out grappled, somehow still stays. I don't know. He's not quite at a 500 record yet, but he's still the Wish version of Mark Hunt, both him and his brother. I'm banking on Justin Tafa catching him. I really am. He's not beating impressive opponents yet on the regional scene. He needs to use his range or wrestling or grappling because he will lose in a brawl to Justin Tafa. Great pocket boxing from Justin Tafa. More power. Can take one to give one. If this stays on the feet, he's going to crack Tallison at one point. Look, Tallison's not at his ceiling yet and does have the tools to thrive at heavyweight. I just don't think he's ready for the spotlight yet. All right, co-main event. We got Zhang Weili against Tatiana Suarez. Now, this one's interesting because neither are super active. Zhang Weili was active early in her career, but now that she's champ, and, you know, quite frankly, in the later stages of her career, 35 years of age, you know, almost 30 pro fights, definitely slowed down her schedule. Almost a year ago was her last fight against Yan Xiaonan, which is such a fun fight. I mean, the fight should have been over early, but, you know, despite going out at the bell, or maybe right before, debatable. Yan Xiaonan continued to actually look good in the later stages of the fight. Before then, a great performance against Amanda Lemos, great performance against Carla Esparza, great performance against Joanna Jędrzejczyk in her second fight against her, where she finished her. Rose Namajunas was kind of just her rival, I guess. The hump she couldn't get over regularly. But in the last 2+ years has been nothing but spectacular. Now, Tatiana Suarez faced so much adversity, both in life and in her pro mixed martial arts career. Just injury after injury after injury. She hasn't fought in over a year in a return fight after, again, an almost 2-year layoff due to injury. She beat Jessica Andrade. Jessica Andrade, you know, far from champ, far from the championship version, I should say. So, like, I wasn't super impressed with this win. But mind you, coming back against Jessica Andrade, solid test coming back after injury. Montana De La Rosa, you know, not the best fighter there, but, you know, a win's a win. Nina Nunes, again, not the best fighter, but a win's a win. Then she made it look easy. Alexa Grasso. Now, I know this was 6 years ago, but still a good win to have on her resume. Tatiana Suarez, look, she's not well-rounded. I'm sure her striking has gotten better over the years, but, like, she leans on her wrestling, as she should. Her wrestling is awesome. But having said that, Zhang Weili's wrestling has not only just, like, gotten better to the point where, like, she can just compete with other girls in mixed martial arts. It's gotten to the point where it's like, Amanda Lemos, sit the fuck down. You know what I'm saying? Right? Like she can tear through grapplers with how strong and how good her wrestling technique has developed in her career. Now, am I going to say it's as good as Tatiana Suarez? No. But, like, do I think Tatiana Suarez wrestling is going to cause as much of a problem to Zhang Weili as it has to a lot of her other opponents? No, I don't think it will. I think that's definitely, you know, control time and do damage, but I don't think you're going to have a lot of time in those control time positions. I don't think Tatiana Suarez is getting, you know, 3 minutes control time stretches on Zhang Weili. I really don't. Zhang Weili is the better striker too. She is a dynamic striker. She has finishing ability. She's quick with her combos in and out of the pocket, and her takedown defense or ability just to mix it up where you don't know what's coming next. You know, a 4-punch combo and a leg kick, or 2 3-punch combo and a takedown, right? You just don't know. So I just think how dynamic Zhang Weili is will, again, with the well-roundedness, I think that'll get it done. The odds keep going back and forth. At 1 hour, Zhang Weili is the slight favorite. The next, Tatiana Suarez, is the slight favorite. I'm going with the more well-rounded fighter. I'm going with the less injured fighter. I'm going with Zhang Weili, who I still think is in her prime because she hasn't really given us any inclination that she's not. Zhang Weili, that is my pick. All right, main event of the evening. Dricus du Plessis against Sean Strickland. Dricus du Plessis defending his title yet again in this rematch. 22-2 as a pro. He's 5-0 in his last 5 fights. 31 years of age, and he is -210 favorite. I thought this one would have been a pick'em, given that, you know, Sean Strickland arguably could have won that last fight, given how close it was. Dricus du Plessis, 9 KO TKO, 11 submission, 2 decision, 8-0 in the UFC, 2-1 in KSW. He beat Sean Strickland for the title, defended it against Israel Adesanya, and now is going to defend it again against Sean Strickland. Has also beaten Robert Whittaker, Derek Brunson, Darren Till, Brad Tavares. So Robert Whittaker, former champ. Derek Brunson, title challenger at one point, right, against Izzy. Darren Till, title challenger, won the title in KSW against Roberto Soldic. Awesome win there. Looked better and better every year in the UFC. Now, Sean Strickland, been around for a while, despite them being close in age and despite them each having, over 20 fights. Sean Strickland has over 30 fights, 4-1 as a pro. Again, lost that close one to Dricus, came back and beat Paulo Costa. Mind you, not in the most exciting fight. At least when BJ Penn says to the death, he tries before quitting on the stool. 11 KO TKOs, 4 submission, 14 decision. I love BJ Penn, by the way. 16-6 in the UFC, 12-0 undefeated and king of the cage, bitch. Yeah, recently only lost to Jared Cannonier, Alex Pereira, and that was a close fight against Jared Cannonier and Dricus du Plessis. Had an amazing win over Israel Adesanya to win the belt. Looked really good against Abbas Magomedov as well, and a great win against Nassourdine Imavov, who also recently beat Israel Adesanya. I think if Sean Strickland fights the same way he did the last time, he's not going to win. And I don't think Sean Strickland is going to mix it up. Now, Sean Strickland is well-rounded, but, since his knee injury, right, since his motorcycle accident, it's like he hasn't really mixed the martial arts. He's very much leaned on his striking. He's very much leaned on his boxing. And it's brought him success, don't get me wrong. But is it going to bring him success against Dricus du Plessis, who's going to probably mix it up even more in this one, given that, he took a lot of visible damage in that first one due to that jab by Sean Strickland. So that's the thing. I think he's going to do well on the feet, or adequate on the feet, because he always does fine on the feet. He's going to land some big shots, maybe win a round due to that. But I think he's going to mix it up a lot more than Sean Strickland, and that's where you're going to get each of them land the same amount of strikes around, but Dricus du Plessis also got 1 minute or 2 minutes of control time and some shots in the clinch, or a few shots on the ground, or maybe a submission attempt, something of that affair. Because Sean Strickland is good at getting back up to his feet, and I do think he's going to escape the grasp of Dricus du Plessis a few times in this fight. I don't think he's necessarily going to get submitted. I do think this goes the distance, and I do think Dricus du Plessis wins, not just by one round that, was a swing round, could have gone either way. I think he wins by a round or two that are okay, yeah, those were Dricus du Plessis rounds. The well-roundedness of a fighter in this sport, man, that's kind of where I lean usually, as you can see with the theme of these picks. And I just don't think Sean Strickland's going to employ anything but his striking, where Dricus du Plessis has both been in there with him now, studied him, both physically, again, fighting him and watching tape. And I think, I'm just banking on, and I think that the game plan should be and will likely be strike with the guy by any means. Don't avoid it, given that you kind of went, back and forth with him before and you weren't outclassed. But mix in the other things so that if it's even on the strike, when it's even on the strike, there's that extra little bit that can sway the judges for a decision. Well, there are my picks. There's the preview show. Those are my predictions. My safe parlay of the week, which there's nobody safe on this card. But we're going to go Salkilld, Steele, Zhang. D-Gen, we're going Rongzhu, Thicknesse, Tafa. And there's not really a lock on this card either, but I guess I'll say Salkilld. Again, there's no lock on this card. Smash that like button and subscribe and join us for the UFC Fight Companion, as well as all the Fight Companions that we have this week.